Hey guys, the GPU season is back on, with NVIDIA releasing its top-of-the-line RTX 4090 for us to fight about. It is $1599 and hella big. So let's see if it's any good for that much money. I'm sure everyone is curious to know what is actually new under the hood. Now it has more CUDA cores totaling over 16,000. They have new streaming multiprocessors that NVIDIA claim deliver up to 2x performance and power efficiency, next-gen Tensor and RT cores, as well as a considerable increase in the amount of them. The next big thing that Jensen focused on stage is DLSS 3, which helps generate entire new frames in comparison to DLSS 2 that works to upscale lower quality frames. The most interesting part here is the ability to use them together, making it possible to upscale the image and also generate extra frames to really push that performance. And last but not least is the new 8th gen NVIDIA encoder, or as most people probably know it as NVENC, which now supports AV1 encoding. NVIDIA went and installed 2 of them on this card, and spoiler alert, it kinda rocks. While we could probably talk a whole hour about all the changes with this next generation of cards, I'm sure you want to see if those huge performance improvements that NVIDIA was boasting about are actually true. For our test, we'll be using the new AMD Ryzen 7700X CPU, and we honed in on the higher end cards, starting with RTX 3080 12GB, the Radeon RX 6900 XT, and the new RTX 4090. So let's jump in and first check out a more standard rasterized performance, then performance with DLSS turned on quality preset, which has the least amount of detail lost. In the good old Shadow of a Tomb Raider with 1440p resolution, there is an 81% improvement on average FPS from the 3080 and 50% on the 1 percentiles. RX 6900 XT here is a pretty close representation of where RTX 3090 could have been. What is interesting here is the FPS per watt. The Radeon card is pretty efficient at this resolution, but the RTX 4090 is still 29% more power efficient. Moving up to 4K resolution, we see both large gen cards are pretty even, while RTX 4090 has almost twice the average FPS and about 90% higher 1 percentiles. In comparison to 1440p, the FPS per watt has halved, which is expected at the higher resolution. Now with DLSS enabled, we gain 37% performance on the RTX 3080 and about 34% performance on the RTX 4090. The main difference here is that the new card still has 44% higher performance without DLSS in comparison to 3080 with DLSS enabled. In Horizon Zero Dawn at 1440p, the performance difference is not as drastic, with 4090 leading the pack by 22% on average FPS and 12% on the 1 percentiles. This is kinda funny, but even in a game with high GPU usage like this, here RTX 4090 is actually making the CPU the bottleneck. When we go up to 4K, we see the things change, and here we have 69% lead on the average FPS and 40% on the 1 percentiles. Turning on DLSS, we get another 14% improvement on average FPS and 8% improvement on the 1 percentiles. It is not as drastic of an improvement as we had in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Next game is Fortnite, and here in 1440p we have 47% lead over RX 6900 XT on average FPS and 41% on the 1 percentiles, which results in 38% improvement on FPS per watt. At 4K, the lead over RTX 3080 is 63% on average FPS and 59% on the 1 percentiles, with almost double the frame rate per watt improvement. I was very skeptical about NVIDIA claiming that they were able to improve both performance and efficiency, as normally you have to make trade on one of them. In this example, their statement stands. Fortnite seems to work really well with DLSS. We get over 50% improvement on average FPS on both cards. And I would even dare to say that with RTX 4090 and DLSS enabled, you could play this game with maxed out settings in a somewhat prosumer way. Not sure I would actually recommend playing a competitive FPS in 4K with maxed out settings, but hey, if you can afford this card, the option is there. So all the previous examples of DLSS performance were based on existing DLSS 2, and this card can clearly output a lot of frames. But that wasn't the main thing NVIDIA was pushing during the presentation. The big one is the new DLSS 3, which actually generates new frames. While currently there are only a few limited titles that support this technology, now that I've seen the performance, I'm sure many companies will pick it up. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing for more tech videos like this. We benchmarked the Unreal Engine 5 Lyra demo at 4K with maxed out settings, as well as multiple of the NVIDIA special source features, such as DLSS, which was set to quality, reflex on and off, and the new DLSS 3 frame generation. We also threw in DLSS with ultra performance mode for fun. As you can see here, we start at 70 average FPS, while at native, DLSS improved this by approximately 60%, while reflex improves the 1 percentiles. And when compared to the native, we double it with DLSS 3. Let's jump in on the PC and check out this performance comparison from Unreal Engine 5 Lyra demo. So in this shot over here, when you look at the wall, you can actually see that the lines on the far right, which is actually using the frame generations, are a lot thinner, and they get thicker as you go towards the left. That's generally probably because of the frame rate is higher on the right, and that actually reduces the motion blur that you get from this particular movement. Therefore, the lines are a lot more sharp, and well, actually across the board you can see all the lines a bit sharper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable just DLSS, and we'll compare native 4K to DLSS 2 and DLSS 3 at the same time. There we go, that's missing. So on the native image, this line is actually quite blurry, therefore it's kind of blending in really nicely. On the upscaled version, that is now a very distinctive bold line. I'd probably say the native picture is a little bit more pleasant because it's not sticking out as much. These are just quick examples of very limited time spent on DLSS. We'll be doing a separate video diving in more games and exploring if DLSS 3 is worth turning on. Let us know what games you would like to see. With the games out of the way, I want to pivot to the area where I think this card will shine the most, and where the price is much more justifiable. It's productivity workloads. We'll start with Blender benchmark. On NVIDIA cards, we're able to test with either CUDA or Optics engines. Here in pure CUDA performance, we see 146% improvement in Monster between RTX 3080 and 4090. In Junk Shop, it's 119, and in the classroom test, it's 136%. Optics results are slightly lower, but if you look closely, it's almost double the performance, and in some tests, it even exceeds that. While these are different price point cards, it's still a huge difference nevertheless. Next, we have another Blender test, but this is an actual rendering time for Scandal's demo. Here the new card essentially halves the rendering time from RTX 3080, and the Radeon card is just left behind. During this test, 4090 frequency actually hit past 2.7 GHz, while 3080 peaked at 2 GHz, which until recently was considered really high speed. When it comes to thermals, I was actually rather surprised. This card was creeping up to mid-50s and stayed there. In some regard, it is due to the finishing their render quick enough and start cooling off. But there's another good reason for this. It is actually using slightly less power than 3080, at times keeping 20 to 30 watt difference, so it's clearly efficient. Even though we set the fan speed to 80%, it was clearly audible, but it did not sound like a jet taking off. Since V-Ray benchmark does not support Radeon cards, we only have NVIDIA on this test. The improvement in performance is very similar to Blender from earlier. We got 166% improvement in CUDA score and 120% improvement in the RTX score. The next and last test is DaVinci Resolve 18, H.265 and AV1 encoding. DaVinci has certainly worked closely with NVIDIA over the years, and they've been integrating a lot of NVIDIA AI and machine learning functionality into the software. I'm not surprised they were one of the first to leverage the new AV1 encoder. In this test, we can clearly see RTX 4090 flying through the render, especially on a 4K file. And when it comes to AV1, the speeds are still very similar, which is pretty impressive considering it was supposed to be more taxing on the system. While AV1 encoding for videos is great, it's even more important for streaming, where you can produce higher quality at lower bitrate as compared to H.264. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes as it gets more support. It is clear to me that this new generation from NVIDIA has a lot to offer. The big question I have is it worth it? Well, 4090 in my mind is more suited for productivity workloads, especially if users can utilize that sweet new encoder. On the other hand, for gamers, this is super expensive and will be bought by people who have much more spare cash than most, but they will still love it. Some of you may wonder why we compared it to the RTX 3080, and there are two reasons for this. First, this is the closest card we have on hand that is similar performance, and the second reason is actually somewhat painful. We bought this card earlier this year at the peak of the shortage at approximately $1,500 price point, and now when I look at it I have a sense of regret. But this is actually a good thing. Since there is now plenty of competition in the market, consumers will benefit from all three players duking it out. Let us know in the comments below, what do you think about this card and will you consider buying it? Also, if you want to check out any of the items covered in the video, the links are in the description below. I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to smash the thumbs up and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys in the next one.